Welcome to Rauta's 85. This time we have something different going on and something usual. Let's start with a black metal release from Great Britain. This one is called Úlfarr, which doesn't sound exactly a British name, and the album in question is, as you can see, Hate and Terror, The Rise of Pure Evil. Such an unoriginal name that it doesn't really leave anything there to be for guessing. It's outright clear that this is black metal the Nordic way. And I might even add, this is very Swedish sounding black metal release. Released by Purity Through Fire, this one is split into 6 parts, literally that is. And the style is somewhat Darkthronian, or should we say Craftian. By that I mean obviously the bands Darkthrone and Craft. As you can see, even the cover image is kind of a homage to these bands. It is very much taking this kind of a Craft and especially Darkthrone style of mid-tempo raw black metal and then making it kind of evil sounding and sinister. Well, if Darkthrone created more or less that style from the ashes of Hellhammer and then picking pieces from Celtic Frost, the earlier ones, I think Craft pretty much made it more Swedish. And it's not the only one obviously out there. Armageddon is one of those bands also which kind of made this style to so-called next level or bit different direction than what Darkthrone was going for. Now Úlfarr is clearly one of those bands that pretty much continues with the same path, but I don't think they have the magic what, for example, Craft actually has. This album is pretty good though, and it has some nice raw production and their vocals are very much right there. So it's a solid release, but it's still like missing something. So I would say it's good, but it's not super good. Definitely something worth checking out if you are into bands like Darkthrone, Craft, Armageddon. And I would say this is kind of like work in progress. Very much going to the same direction as Craft was going to, but still not quite there. The next one here is Örnatorpet. I don't know actually how to pronounce it, and I don't know the exact meaning, but this one is not metal album. This one is Vid Himinsenda is a kind of a dungeon synth album. I was, to be honest, expecting a sort of a nature-oriented, maybe acoustic guitars and whatever, but this is unfortunately so done with keyboards only, and that's pretty much what there is to say about this album. If you are familiar with the style, Mortis, so nicely made back in the 90s, you know pretty much what to expect. Unfortunately, not as good. To me, it sounds like this band is experimenting a lot, but not exactly able to create any good songs, especially on this album, because it seems like none of these things here are that catchy. It's more like having wonderful amount of different kind of approaches to keyboard played music, but not exactly the dancing kind of dark, not exactly very catchy, not kind of a medieval feeling. If you know what I mean when trying to describe this kind of music, to me it sounds much like it's kind of a video game music in a India house fashion. So it's like, hey, let's put these kind of ideas here and there, and it's like, yeah, background music. And I'm not saying it's gonna be bad. It's not sounding bad as such, but to be honest, nothing too shabby about it. It's kind of like mediocre, or even a little less than that. Certainly has some nice ideas here and there, and it's not like the sound banks are badly used, but the overall feeling is like there's so much better going on in the genre with this one. So for fans of acquired taste only and still desperate for getting more dungeon synth. Continue with Sweden. This one is called Netherbird, band that turned 15 years in this year, 2019. This is their 5th album, so the band is not too active with its full-length album. Every 3 years there's an album out. Then you have some splits and singles here and there to fill the gaps. And this one is of melodic style, a melodic black metal. One could say this is related to bands such as Dissection and Unanimated, both being Swedish bands as well. But this is not clearly on the same page, on the same level as with those one. I could say this album is, however, better than those I've heard before, for example, The Ghost Collector. And it seems like the band is actually improving itself quite a bit, because during the early years the albums were quite crappy or mediocre at best, while Into the Vast Uncharted is more like, hey, now we got this engine going, now we know what to do in the proper way of creating Swedish melodic black metal. Now, the style here is very, very mainstreamish. This is very far away from being raw or extreme metal as such. This is actually closer to so-called melodic death metal, or just melodic metal, what so many Swedish bands were doing back in the 90s. That is, bands like In Flames, Dark Triangle, the Gates of Ishtar, and the like. So it's kind of like a softer version of what it used to be called extreme metal. I wouldn't call this extreme metal as such, but it's clearly very black metal based in terms of how the riffs, melodies, vocals and everything is there. The production is really good, it's really crispy and clear, so it might be too much even for fans of raw black metal, but I think then again this fits totally what this music is all about. And after all, if you're a fan of music like Dissection, then you know that this kind of production fits this kind of music extremely well. Now, vocals are also part that is so much away from being kind of a raw and violent, inhuman and all the stuff, because it's very much like, hey, let's go to the mainstream, let's kind of adjust to vocals in a way that they won't scare away the big audiences. And I don't know, maybe this is just intentional. It certainly feels like that. It seems like this band is going to go after bigger audiences. They want to make it to the mainstream. This is how I feel about it, album. And I'm not going to say it's a bad thing. Obviously, bands can do whatever they want with their music. And as such, maybe this is intended for fans of black metal who don't want exactly extreme black metal. So, melodic black metal for melodic black metal audience. There you have it. Last two of these 85 are actually from Norway. And yes, they are Norwegian black metal. Obviously, all people know that Norway used to be the gold mine for black metal. Unfortunately, not every band coming from Norway is that much of a quality. Without any more of a disrespect or anything like that, we'll start with Eternity. This one is already from 2003, the band that is, released first album in 2006, and now it's time for the second album, already 2019. Originally one-man band, this band has evolved to a full lineup or 4 members, and they are not the newcomers to the genre, actually quite experienced ones. So that of course yields us good album, right? Unfortunately, not as quite much. To Become the Great Beast is an attempt to create kind of a Norwegian classic. I find it funny that with the promo letter it was said that this was supposed to be the ultimate black metal album. But to be honest, this is quite the contrary. The funny thing is, this is one of those black metal releases which is very safe, almost like tasteless, and of any kind of originality is not present. The thing here is, this is melodic, kind of a fast pace, but it's not done with blast beats. It's not using synths to the max. It's not very raw. It's not very interesting. However, that is not to say that Eternity is not doing great work, but it is just something that you probably heard already a few hundred times, because everything there presented is something like kind of a diluted version of what you've had. I mean, there are better bands with going melodics, there are better bands going more violent, more fast-paced stuff, and there were way more bands that were raw, darker, more sinister, and what have you not. So this is kind of like the midpoint, kind of like compromise of sorts with different styles. So very safe to listen, but not still mainstream enough to make a kind of a big difference in the audience. Quite okay, definitely decent album, but is it great? Unfortunately, no. So if you're a die-hard Norwegian black metal fan, obviously you need to check this out. But I mean, don't expect anything phenomenal. Now, last band in this 85 is probably the most interesting ones. It's called Dold Vorde Ens Navn, and this EP is called, as you can see, Gjengangere hjertets mørke. I have no idea how to pronounce it properly. I know that hjertes is related to heart and mørke means dark, and there you have it. So something about dark heart. So why this is interesting? Not because the name is very catchy, but because of the lineup. 3 out of 4 guys in this band are ex or current Dead Himensenda members. A couple of them are actually also members of either Úlfarr or Örnatorpet and Vid Himinsenda. So there is a lot of skill, experience, talent, and all that stuff in this band. Now, this is supposed to be the killer album, or EP as it is, 20 minutes and so. In this Indie 5, unfortunately not. Well, let's put it this way. If you are a big fan of Vid Himinsenda and Dold Vorde Ens Navn's latest metal things, I mean before they turned to something else than just being a black metal band, then you might have had a chance with this one, because this is something kind of a different and at the same time kind of a familiar. Take parts of Dold Vorde Ens Navn, some Úlfarr and some other parts, mix and match and put them in the Oslo blender, and then you have it. And it's kind of interesting, but I mean only a halfway through success. The thing here is, the Cotton is doing wonderful vocals, being crazy and all that stuff, wild if you will, but it's not enough to carry the album all the way through. 20 minutes in and out, and you're like, okay, I've heard some Úlfarr parts, but not as good as Úlfarr, and it's definitely not the best parts of Dold Vorde Ens Navn. Everything feels pretty much like with Eternity, just different style of diluted material. It seems like these guys of Dold Vorde Ens Navn so badly wanted to come back for black metal, like realizing like Dold Vorde Ens Navn isn't what it used to be, so let's create a new project and try to approach black metal again. And in my opinion, it's not that great of a success. By no means a bad album or, well, EP, but more like you guys have an idea, but you don't know how to execute it. Which is kind of interesting considering that these guys are very, very experienced veterans. I mean, for example, a couple of first Dold Vorde Ens Navn's albums are just, great, essential black metal from Norway. But this is very far from it. I mean, if this was like no-name guys being a new band, nobody would give a damn. Production-wise, pretty mediocre-ish, not exactly bad, but not very strong. More like a kind of a demo recording, if you will. Demo recording, that is. And vocals are great, but like I said, not enough to make a big difference. Definitely for fans of Norwegian black metal, like I said, being veterans and all that stuff, but without it, not much to talk about. Let's see if these guys are up to for another release later on. This is very fresh. Band is from 2019, this is from 2019, so maybe it's actually a demo on an MCD format. Who knows? But there you have it. Go check out the samples and decide for yourself which ones are for your listening pleasure and go to your record collection. These won't be, unfortunately, going for mine. Anyway, see you soon with more Rauta stuff coming your way. Take care.